Hi, everyone. Welcome back to the Be More podcast, where we inspire you to be a little bit more of every role within the Salesforce ecosystem. For today's session, we are talking about what it takes to be more CRM analytics. And I'm joined today by Pete Lyons. So, Pete, are you able to introduce yourself to our audience, please?
Sure. Lyons, Salesforce MVP based in Buffalo, New York. Been in the ecosystem since the beginning of 2015. Before that, I was a baker. I'm also a user group leader. And I do a lot of different things to try to help the community. In addition to CRMA, I'm also kind of a generalist. I specialize in declarative automation. But you don't really see many projects where it's like, well, we need a flow specialist. You do see projects where you need an analytics specialist. So these days I tend to focus on that more.
Okay, awesome. Well, it's great to have you with us today. And maybe before we get started, are you able to explain what CRMA has been within its various kind of different names and forms? Because, Salesforce like to change the names of things, confuse people. So are you able to give us a brief history of that?
So it's actually on its 8th name. Back in 2014, Salesforce acquired a company called EdgeSpring, and at Dreamforce 2014, they announced what was then called Wave Analytics. It's most commonly known in the past as Einstein Analytics. It was briefly known as Tableau CRM. There's a few other names that it's had very briefly or before it was well known. It's basically a business intelligence-like solution that sits on top of core Salesforce for all of those challenges where standard reports and dashboards don't get the job done. Salesforce, they tend to like to buy multiple copies of the same thing, and they're very acquisition heavy. They've actually done, I think, around 70 acquisitions since 2006. And so they actually have 2 other BI tools. They also have Tableau, and they have Marketing Cloud Intelligence, formerly known as Datorama. So Datorama really just plays in that marketing space. But you may see a lot of overlap. Like, why would I choose either Tableau or CRM Analytics? And they both have their strengths and weaknesses. A lot of my clients do actually have both, and they use them for different things and for different reasons. First, if your audience is primarily spending a lot of time in Salesforce, you're leaning towards CRM Analytics. We also have the action framework. So out of the box, everything that you get in the Lightning record pages in the top right, your new call, log it, or new task, log a call, my custom action, double underscore C. Those are all very easy to expose anywhere that you see like a record name. We can click on it and link to the record or trigger any of the actions that are available for that. We can extend that through flows and Apex actions. Really common use case that we give as an example is, okay, I've used my extremely fancy dashboard to filter down to a list of contacts that I want to add to a campaign, and set it up so that with a single click, they get inserted as campaign members. A lot of cool features that we have there. It works very well in an embedded context. So if your primary data source is Salesforce and you're spending a lot of time in Salesforce, CRMA is the natural choice. Also, if you have really high volume data, you might be better off with CRMA because the processing is done on Salesforce servers and you have a 10 billion row cap. If your users aren't really in Salesforce very much, you've got data all over the place, especially if it's on-prem data and you don't want to buy middleware or build your own integration, maybe Tableau is a better pick for you. But they each have their own strengths and weaknesses. They have a lot of overlap, but usually we work with our clients to see what is the right use case for you. But circling back to the original question, it's reports and dashboards on steroids. And once you start building with it, if you do have to go back to the standard report builder, you suddenly realize just how limited it is.
Okay, awesome. Well, that's great context there. And I know that Salesforce provide numerous different templates now within CRMA for different things. Like, for example, I play around a little bit with Pardot, and there's a B2BMA template there. There's also one, I think, for loyalty management. There's a service one, a sales one. Do you ever get involved with kind of expanding upon those?
The vertical that we're working in, the industry, that plays
Mm.
a huge deciding role in how we go about doing it. So if it's a traditional sales org, regardless of what industry they're in, if their primary use of Salesforce is opportunity pipeline management, I will always, I will always implement the Sales Analytics app as a starting
Mm.
point. It allows the customer, like within an hour, to see their data on dashboards and to understand what it is that I'm talking about. So we have a visual learning tool where I can start to show them the different features. They can play around with it, and it really gets the ball rolling, especially when we try to align requirements to a solution. Um,
Mm.
yeah, the sales analytics template is probably the most robust as far as customization is concerned. Although it is relatively dated, it comes from like the 2015 era. So there are several successors to it. For example, the revenue operations template, which also
Yeah.
has Einstein Discovery incorporated into it. We've got customer insights, which has a more modular approach where instead of getting full dashboards, you get a whole bunch of components that you can pick and choose and assemble how you want. But it is an external tool, and there is an ETL layer, extract, transform, load. You have like a visual data prep tool where until you teach it, it doesn't understand that opportunities and accounts are connected. Where these templates are the most valuable is they get you up and running on your data sets early off. Now, different industries, there's also vertical specific offerings. There's like templates for Commerce Cloud. There's health cloud stuff. There's financial services. There's a ton of different industry specific templates, and sometimes we will just start with a full custom build in the higher education advancement space. Uh, when we have these larger managed packages that kind of are the go-to standard in certain verticals, it actually gives us the opportunity to templatize around them. So actually, we'll develop reusable ETL scripts that kind of get us up and running faster because when you tell the client we've got to build all the back end first and you're not going to see a dashboard for a really long time, but trust me, the dashboards are very quick. They start to get antsy. They want to see like, well,
Yeah.
with every other part of Salesforce, you can at least give me some kind of mock up pretty quickly. If we use templates, it's really a question of is there a template that's appropriate? In most cases, yes, but not in all.
Okay.
And very rarely do we find a customer where the template is the complete journey.
Mm.
Sometimes we will do small Kickstart implementations if they only have a few licenses and they're just trying to try the product out. Sometimes we'll just spin up a template, train them on it, help them to kind of road show it internally.
Yeah.
But the only clients that are really going to just use the template and only the template are the clients that aren't really customizing their Salesforce instance. If they've settled into their org at all, you're going to be doing at least some customizations. And everybody's got something crazy that they need built.
So now thinking about this as somebody that's kind of involved in a CRMA project, what type of other people would you see on a project?
So I'm a consultant first. Now my passion is technology, and there's nothing I love more than a good tech riddle. But if our clients knew all the answers and they knew best practice inside and out, they wouldn't need to come to us. So a lot of times what they want us to do isn't necessarily what's right for them. So the first thing I have to do is understand what the business problem is. And,
Yeah.
and then from that I can solution. So why do we put our end users through like rats in a maze, for all the structured data capture? Is it because it's fun? I mean, it's fun for me to build, but the reason why is we want good reporting. That's ultimately the final deliverable is your
Yeah.
reporting. But everything that you build to get to there tends to be a bit bigger. So we tend to be in smaller teams where you're going to find that whoever's leading the project is most likely running as technical architect and solution architect. You definitely want a PM.
Yeah.
Basically, somebody who has, no emotional investment in the build whatsoever to keep you honest with things like due dates and
Yeah.
scope creep. I'm heavily reliant on a good PM because I have a really nasty habit of solutioning during discovery.
Yeah.
Um, Another role that is absolutely critical, business analyst.
Yeah.
I cannot say enough good things about a good BA. They are more than just a note taker. They do help you with a lot of the implementation work. CRMA BAs need to be technically leaning. They're
Hmm.
not just pure functional BAs. Um, I can't take notes and be engaged with my clients at the same time. One or
Yeah.
the other. But good BA to back me up and to help keep me running is extremely critical. So yeah, a PM, technical architect, solution architect, a BA. The BA is typically technically leaning. In
Hmm.
CRMA implementations, you may have dedicated developers, but usually the development work is going to be shared between the TA and the BA roles.
Yeah. Okay. Awesome. Well, that's great to understand how it compares to perhaps a more traditional Salesforce project. So, thinking about this now, and be honest with me here, does CRMA keep you busy full time all of the time, or do you kind of lean into perhaps just pure Salesforce projects as well?
So back in 2015, I'm on this nightmare project where we've got 5 different objects to represent money changing hands because we didn't have things like, filterable lightning related lists. And our
Yeah.
option was either, build a visual force page, or to get different related lists, we needed multiple objects. And that's what they did. But answering a simple question like, what did our customers owe us at the end of the month when business closed? Was extremely challenging because you were beyond the limits of joint reports, and it was extremely challenging for our client to be able to answer simple questions. They
Mm.
also had me backing up the development team through reporting by saying things like, "Hey Pete, we got 500,000 transactions in the system. 7 of them are off by exactly 4 cents. Why? Use the standard report builder to figure it out." So one of my teammates went to Toronto and he took the Wave Brown Belt training, which
Mm.
was like the accreditation program that before we had a cert, before it was really even a fully baked product. And he brought it back and he was like, take a look at this. It's like I can do cross object reporting, and I'm like, this is it. This is exactly what I need. And he's
Yeah.
like, yeah, the code's real easy too. I'd never written any code before. I'm like, oh no. I'm like, nope.
Yeah.
Not going to let that stop me. I'm going to figure this thing out. Little by little, I eventually did. Now, when I got my brown belt cert, my then boss, the founder of the company that I was, Cloud 62, Raj Suchek, that's we got acquired and became part of Huron. He said to me, Pete, don't take this the wrong way. I'm really proud that you're taking initiative and learning new things, and I love seeing you go in different directions. But Wave's kind of a lemon, so focus on billable work, please. In 2015, 16, 17, that I might do 10 hours a quarter of analytics work.
Mm.
Every once in a while, I'd get a pretty significant project that would keep me busy for a while. But it was very feast or famine. And I was kind of like the one-stop shop for everything analytics in our team. Sometimes I'd get, assistance from somebody else, but nobody else was really a dedicated resource for it. And I did do a lot of standard work. Now I actually have a team, and not just like people that report up to me, but there are, 2 other people at the same level as me that, will run projects. We've got a pool of dedicated technical resources that will only work on CRM Analytics projects. We have a number of BAs that, if we have enough work to keep them busy, they're on our projects. You got to have appetite for it. If
Yeah.
you're not interested in learning analytics, all the training in the world is not going to help. If you're actually passionate about it and you really if you love data and you love a good challenge, then it might stick. But we've had a lot of people that we trained on it, and they're just like, get me back to core.
I really love your story there, how you kind of gone and made not just a lemonade stand out of this lemon, but you've actually made a whole kind of enterprise out of it. Now, kind of reflecting a little bit on your own journey, but if somebody's listening to this and they're inspired to try it, they want to be more CRMA, what tips, advice would you give to them? Maybe 2 or 3 top tips.
Well, my first tip is not CRMA specific. It's if you're trying to transition to any kind of career change, or if you are passionate about learning something new and you see obstacles and barriers, stubborn determination it is my
Yeah.
secret sauce. Just keep at it. Do not back down. Do not give up. Google. The second tip would be anytime that you see something you don't understand, Google it until you do. So before I did this, again, I was a baker. And how do you transition from baker to like technical consultant? Well, you do that by running an amateur computer repair shop out of your apartment for 5 years. The way I did that was by Googling my way to success. So the other way that I learned, if you see a button that you don't understand and you're not in production, just go ahead and click that button. Maybe it's a little bit safer in a trailhead environment, but like click every button. That's how I learned the product when there was no documentation.
I love how we kind of reflected a little bit on that stubborn determination. That's definitely a skill I have. And I remember when I was first learning Salesforce, it took that to get through, because otherwise I would have perhaps just gave up, right? And kind of almost stopped.
For example, blackjack. Built blackjack in a trailhead org. It works too. So how did I decide which? And I did not use any Apex whatsoever. The random number generator and everything is all flows. So
Nice.
how did I decide what is going into a flow for the lift and what's going into CRMA? Well, CRMA handled the UX UI. Flow handled the game's automation. With newer features that are available to us, for example, I would have actually just embedded the dashboard directly into a flow now. I've got some reusable code that I can actually do that with. You just tell it, this is my dashboard's API name. This is how tall I want it to be. Here's the filter I want you to apply. Boom, dashboard's in the flow. With a little bit more work, you can actually pass values back and forth to the flow from the dashboard. So, where I put my weight was, well, flows are really good for turning the dials and manipulating the records themselves. And then I can pull that data up into CRMA, visualize it however I like, and give the end user some degree of interaction there. But it's a lot easier for me to pop up buttons and things like that on a flow and hand that back to the flow. So for the record manipulation and all of that automation, yeah, you can do some cool stuff with CRMA, but flows are just much better suited for it. And if you ever want another great example of like just agnostic, so this kind of touches on that teaching part, or that how to self-teach. One of the biggest problems with Trailhead is it's like, well, I almost feel like sometimes I'm just reading a brochure. I don't learn by just looking at something and saying it's cool. I learn because there's an obstacle in my path and I need to get to the other side of that obstacle.
Yeah.
So typically, like the reason I do things like build blackjack is because I need a good challenge. And when you have a lot of good tricks up your sleeve already and your clients are risk adverse, it becomes very difficult to find a challenge that puts you in a position where you have to learn something new. So something like blackjack, I don't have to worry about, the client's budget, whether the solution's going to fail or not. I don't need something bulletproof. I can just go and push it to the limits and test my skills and discover new things. So if you need a challenge like that, and maybe trying to build a board game in Salesforce is a little bit too much for you, check out adventofcode.com. It's this guy, Eric Watzel. He puts this thing together every year. It's free. And it's a language agnostic coding challenge that runs for the first 25 days of December, but you can go back and do all the previous year's challenges. They're loosely Christmas themed. I've solved tons of them using declarative Salesforce. Some of them you can do even in Excel.
Now, taking an opportunity to reflect on your own experience with CRMA, If there was one thing that you would change or do differently, does anything come to mind?
I was too resistant to change
Mm.
at a few different instances. So, great example of this, and I've seen this sort of pattern over the years, like developers that hated on Lightning when it came out, and we have people in
Yeah.
like 2019 that are still writing Visual Force. There was the classic wave designer that was a dashboard with like pixel to the pixel specifications for where your widgets were. There was a concept of z-index for layering. We could do all these tricks we called white box, where we had just a box widget that we would use to hide different, like instead of hiding a
Mm.
chart legend, we would just put a box over it. Like I use that trick to make things like traffic lights and all sorts of cool hacks. Then they came out with the Flex Designer, which is a grid-based layout that's designed to stretch to the available screen real estate. It's for better interoperability between like Mac laptops have like a different aspect ratio, or if you're on a phone or
Mm.
a tablet or a giant monitor or a tiny monitor,
Yeah.
and specifying your pixel size of different components, it doesn't scale well and it doesn't scale across devices. So the Flex Designer was intended to solve for that problem, but it had some trade-offs and some things that I was not too happy to lose. And it was
Yeah.
really my stubbornness because I learned a million different tricks to replace the tricks that I was losing, but I was resistant. And I told my clients, "Oh, I hate it. I don't want to work with it. It's bad." And so then we continued to build on the Classic Designer. And then when they deprecated the Classic Designer, end of life it, I had to go back to those same clients and tell them, "We're going to need more hours to migrate you over to the tool that was totally available and I should have been building on." So
Yeah.
it's my resistance to change. And it doesn't matter whether or not you like the new fancy thing that Salesforce has come out with. Great example would be data flows versus recipes. I
Mm.
personally I prefer data flows. A lot of it is my own comfortability. It's not that one tool is better than the other or not that determines my preference. It's really just I have more data flow experience, therefore I like them better because
Yeah. You know them
my
better.
chair, it smells like me. So but I have this, more, this mindset that's been tempered by bad experience where I can't be resistant of that. And,
Yeah.
because that dev train's going to keep on rolling, whether you like it
Yeah.
or not. And, you're just going to create extra work for the future and, get in your own way.
Thinking about somebody that wants to learn or work with CRMA, are there like two attributes or skills you would use to describe that person?
You have to like a good riddle.
Yeah.
And you need to be able to visualize data architecture. If you have a knack for UX UI, you're probably going to make pretty dashboards. I don't make the prettiest dashboards. My strength is really the ETL, the back end is where I really shine. Now, being able to tell a story with a couple of charts is a really important skill. I don't make the prettiest dashboards. Where I'm really strong is that data layer. But fortunately, I don't go it alone. I have a team of people, and some of them are better at different parts than others. Not to say that you do need technical experience for it, because I don't have any. I didn't have any technical experience before I got into this. But I do find that people with prior SQL experience or experience with other reporting tools, they tend to come up to speed a lot faster.
Hmm. Is there anything that comes to mind that perhaps when people think of CRMA, they come to this common misconception, or there's something that isn't really clear that you could perhaps clarify for us now?
There used to be a stigma that it couldn't do anything with external data. That's not true.
Mm.
It does have a bit of a weak spot with on-prem. There's a number of out-of-the-box free cloud connectors. There's a ton of different middleware options. There's very good API support. So, that's none of that's really an issue. Yeah, I guess a bit of a people problem. And this is not just CRMA, but reports in general. I have had projects where my client comes to me and they say that, the reports that they have are junk and that they need new reports. After we do a little bit of discovery work, we realize The problem isn't your reports. It's a people problem. You have 10 different business units, and they all, have the same 5 KPIs that they track their business by, but they each have a slightly different way of defining it. And they don't trust the reports coming out of CRM because the data is no good. So they do all of their work in Excel, and it's because they're not adopting the system that the data is no good, because all of the teams have agreed to not do the thing, and that's why it's not working. So I guess the myth is that reporting is going to a new reporting tool is going to solve your problem. If you think that's the case, look at your current reporting tool and ask, hey, would these reports maybe be good if we could all agree on the definition of success, on the definition of a KPI, and if we could all agree to, put our data in the system? No amount of reporting can fix garbage data. Reporting is not a magic bullet to get to solve your business processes. It's there to enrich it, but there's kind of this journey of data maturity, and you have to be at the right point in that journey for a more advanced tool, especially if you're going to invest in it. And the licenses are not cheap, so don't invest in a huge tool when really the problem is a people problem.
Yeah, I think that's great advice there, and also reflects on the fact that not all challenges can be solved by systems, right? There's sometimes your process needs to change, or somebody needs to actually ask, why are we doing this or working a certain way? So I think that's
sometimes you need to log into the system and use it.
Well, yeah, there is that as well. I think that's great advice, and a nice little kind of anecdote to end on, really. Before we do go, what's the way for people to connect with you? And do you have any particular resources or content you'd like to shout out?
Yes, you can check out my YouTube channel, Let's Play Salesforce. I'm not always the fastest about it, but I do reply to any questions I get there in the comments section. You can hit me up on LinkedIn too. I typically get back to my LinkedIn messages pretty quick. I would say definitely the success community is an awesome place to just post your questions if you need immediate feedback.
I can certainly vouch for the Trailblazer community as a Salesforce forum ambassador now, as they call us. And there's definitely a lot going on in that CRMA group. As I said, unfortunately, bringing today's session to a close, and just wanted to thank you again for your time, and hopefully when this goes out, we'll inspire more people to be more CRMA. So thanks again. Thanks for tuning in to Be More with Tom Bassett. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and leave any feedback in the comments.